Hi, I'm Rachel with IdeateTV, and I'm here with Steve Sue, the writer and producer of Shaka, A Story of Aloha. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rachel.
So, I know that this film took you a long time. It started off in 2019.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, it was really long, 5 years. It hurt a lot. I mean, I just about nearly killed my director, Alex, but he survived, and we did too.
He survived, and you both made an amazing film, which is important. So you said that it started off as a story about Tutu Hamana, right?
Well, it started off as a quest to find out about the Shaka, because I was doing some branding work in Honolulu, which is telling the story of companies, and a friend of mine wanted to make a product called Shaka. And so I said, if you're going to make a product, you better know what the Shaka means. It's a cultural thing. So I started looking into it on Google and got kind of bit by the story. And another friend said, go to Laie and talk to Auntie Kayla, who's in the picture with me. And she just was like lit. And her whole message to me was that the keiki, the children today, they don't consume story the same way Auntie Kayla's generation did, because they would do like chanting or hula or song. They didn't have social media. They didn't have movies. And she said, if we're going to pass down the lineage of these really important stories, we have to do it through a film. Would you please tell this in a film? And they'd never shared the story before because they were always afraid of somebody misappropriating this cultural story. So I kind of got drafted because I was the right guy, the right place and time. And so I just kind of got bit by it. I thought, let's do an educational piece. And we got funding. I did this as a nonprofit, so we had grant funding to do it, and it was going to be a 20-minute documentary originally. And as I got into the story, it got really big, and it was clearly a feature. And I actually had to stair-step my way up my production crew, and eventually Alex came on because I really needed a feature director. And it was just kind of magic. We built a crew of people from UH Manoa, which is University of Hawaii, and on our island. We had a lot of local artisans step up. So Brian Spicer, who's probably our most decorated director in our state, he stepped up and is my co-executive producer of the project, and he donated a crap ton of equipment because he owns a big rental house. In fact, he bought a sound studio on our island called Island Sound, and we recorded all of our tracks there. And by the way of tracks, Henry Capono, who is like the godfather of music for our state, 50 years in music, really decorated musician, Grammy nominated, the whole deal. He stepped up and he said, Steve, I want to do the music for you. And he wrote 4 original songs. And then he brought the next generation of talent, which is amazing to hear, like these super talented people that are actually trending now in pop music. Tavana, Kimi A. Minor, Anna V, K. Aloha. There's a ton of them out there that have come into studio and worked with us. And that was actually one of the most eye-opening experiences for me in this project, was doing the sound design and working with all these great talents.
The sound design, the cinematography, it's all amazing. Probably my favorite part is just how extensive the research was. What was that like?
It was deep, and it hurt a lot. It really did. I mean, you know, I actually feel that there's a certain time period that a documentary is mature to do. If it's too old of a story, there's not archival, there's nobody to interview. If it's too young, it's not interesting, because it's not something that you go back enough in time, there's a deep enough story. So there always has to be those kind of sizzle moments along the way, the payoffs that you don't normally get with just somebody telling you a story about what happened yesterday. So this particular story is 110 years old, and that makes it really hard to research in some sense, but there will be archival. There will be newspaper clippings, there's books out there. We actually found a fair amount of film footage from the 40s and 50s. And yes, when everybody shot like in Super 8 or, you know, even 16 millimeter stuff. So there was actually pretty good content, and many of the subjects we covered are extremely well documented. The most controlling story, the oldest story that we explore, because we explore 6 different origin stories, but the oldest story is of a very famous man in our state, and there was literally hundreds of newspaper articles of him. And you think, like, he lived on the opposite side of the island than Honolulu, which is where the newspapers were, and it's like a half-day journey just to get there in that day. So for this guy to be that much covered in media was kind of an amazing thing. And we were lucky that there was this content left. And at the same time, there are people today that we interviewed, many of them, that were right now they're in their late 80s, early 90s, but they were small kids when this man was an elder, when he was in his 80s. So it's literally at that moment in time where they haven't lost their marbles yet. There's no dementia yet with these interviewees, but they know that the story's going to evaporate. And that's kind of was the impetus to get this project going.
Oh, okay. Yeah, even the bulletin board you use, it's such a good representation of preserving archives, right? What did you want people to take away from watching Shaka, aside from knowing the history of it?
Well, the takeaway for me is that the Shaka is the Aloha spirit. And if we share Aloha through this, everybody has this in their pocket. So we can share that out to the world, and we'll make the world a better place, literally. In our state right now, I actually wrote a bill to do the Shaka as a state gesture. Oh. And we just got passed yesterday.
Congratulations!
Yeah, right. It's cool, right? Yeah, so we go to governor's desk and they sign it, and it'll be the law of the land, and it'll be the first ever gesture of a state. And the argument for me was that if we don't do it, then we will lose actually an economic asset, because there are many souvenir shops that you walk into, all you see are shakas. So people earn their livelihood of this. But if we don't protect it for Hawaii, then California could do it, right? Because California's sport of choice of their sport of symbolism or whatever it is, their state sport is surfing. But surfing was invented in Hawaii. Hawaii's state sport is canoeing, because that's how the Hawaiians got there.
Oh.
So it kind of trumps surfing, right? But to me, the next step is, okay, if California is claiming surfing, why wouldn't they claim the Shaka, which is the emblem of Aloha, Hawaii, surfing, everything for us? And at the same time, maybe Texas would claim it, because if you look at this, that's the Longhorns, right? But everything's big in Texas. Isn't this bigger?
True.
Yeah, so we got to beat Texas to that, right? So that's kind of key for us, is to just preserve these assets for the state. And there's also an emoji that people know it, but it's actually call me.
Oh, that's why it's vertical.
Yeah, it's vertical. You're exactly right. So if you are in your car and your reader says, Steve's asking you to call him, I'm not. I'm throwing you a Shaka. It's a completely different meaning. And who the heck asks you to call them anymore? Unless you're maybe 90, right? And grandma's going to ask you to call, but nobody else does. So it's an archaic thing that it's a phone receiver. Nobody asks to call. It should be called the Shaka, but a legit Shaka is actually this way, an elbow tucked in, because this is hang loose. It's an easy sign. And so to me, this is actually indigenous affront. It's like, this is wrong for our indigenous meaning. In Hawaii, this is right. So if all we do is rotate it 45 degrees, then we have the right thing. Then we call it Shaka. Everybody's happy. So that is an application we filed this year with Unicode. And then we have one more super fun thing that just happened. 2 years in the making. I got a Shaka state license plate.
What, shaped like one, or it has one?
Well, so it's the normal, we have a rainbow license plate, which is the garden variety license plate. But I got it where there's 5 characters instead of 6. They push them all to the right. That leaves a space for a Shaka. Okay. And the Shaka looks like, it's literally this Shaka.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And so this Shaka is to me, this is like, it's the perfect symbol. It's simple, it's iconic, people know what this is. You don't have to speak English to know what this is. This will share love around the world. So it goes on the license plate starting later this month. Any resident in the state of Hawaii gets one.
I'm so happy for you. And is there anything else you would like to share with people?
No, man, I'm spent. This is like an insane thing to make a film. This is my very first film ever.
You did such a good job.
Well, thank you. What the frick? Yeah,
so good.
Well, thank you. Well, I had a lot of people work on this thing, and really the right people. So I basically just got the heck out of the way, and I actually didn't want to be in the picture, and they kept putting me in it, and I finally understood why, and then I kind of owned it, and I realized that I could do that, and it's just an amazing learning experience, amazing journey, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, because even though it's really hard to do, it hurts like heck. This was an amazing team, and it was pure love all the way through the process. So it's one of those things, like, you don't want to give it up, because But you have to go on to something else new, right?
Yeah, it's the world's now, but I can't wait to like continue and see what else you make. It's so, yeah.
We'll make something else, yeah, eventually.
All right.
Can you have a few ideas?
Really? Can you throw us a shaka, please?